Okay, good morning. I think we'll get ready to kick off. We just have participants joining, so we'll wait another minute or two to get started properly, just as to let a few more people get online. Okay, we'll get underway. My name is Ruth Hegarty, and you're very welcome on behalf of BIM and Fáilte Ireland to this morning's Taste the Atlantic webinar. As you're probably all aware, Taste the Atlantic is a joint initiative of BIM and Fáilte Ireland, and its subtitle is Seafood Journey. It's really a collection of seafood experiences along the Wild Atlantic Way, and a way for visitors, whether from overseas or locally, to connect with the seafood along the coast, and I suppose have a taste experience of the Wild Atlantic Way. So BIM, along with Fáilte Ireland, have organised this webinar this morning, obviously in really unprecedented times when everyone is looking at how to adapt and innovate and survive through this crisis, and to bring together seafood producers as well as tourism and hospitality businesses along the Wild Atlantic Way. And we've had a massive response to the webinar, so we're delighted to have so many people joining. There's over 100 online now, but the people are joining gradually in, and we've had a huge number of registrations. So looking forward to a good conversation this morning. So just the housekeeping first of all, we are recording the webinar and it will be made available publicly after the event. We're going to do a Q&A section at the end, but if time allows and if there's an opportunity, we might take a few questions as we go, but do feel free to ask your questions throughout, and I'll come to some of them along the way if I can, and we'll come to a few certainly in the last 10 minutes or so of the webinar. So to ask a question, you can go to the Q&A button, which you should see on the panel across the bottom of your screen. You can put your questions in there, and yeah, we'll answer as many as we can fit in. So please join the conversation online with the hashtag Taste the Atlantic Network, and indeed, as well as being, as I said, a collection of seafood experiences, Taste the Atlantic really does provide the opportunity for a really powerful network. I think that's one of the things we really want to talk about today, which is the opportunity for lots of collaboration and connection between the seafood producers, and the hospitality restaurant sector, and I suppose both locally and across the regions and areas along the Wild Atlantic Way. And with that in mind, after the webinar, we'll be sending all of the participants an interactive Taste the Atlantic map. And there you will find all of the producers who are part of Taste the Atlantic and their contact details. So I suppose we very much encourage people to connect with each other afterwards, which you can do through that map or by finding each other and connecting using the hashtag online Taste the Atlantic Network. So I am delighted to be joined this morning by two people I know very well and have been lucky enough to work closely with in the past. Birgitta Hedin-Curtin down in Lisdoonvarna, and JP McMahon in Galway. Birgitta, of course, is the owner of Burren Smokehouse and Visitor Centre in Lisdoonvarna, and also the Taste the Atlantic Irish Salmon Visitor Experience, which she launched last year, just over a year ago. Unfortunately, hasn't had the opportunity to do as much with it as she would have envisaged in 2020, but certainly looking forward to bringing that back to life in 2021, I'm sure. And Birgitta's family also run the Roadside Tavern and Burren Storehouse in Lisdoonvarna, and Birgitta's a very active member of Burren Ecotourism Network and Burren Food Trail, and many other networks and collaborations. So, I mean, Birgitta really does cross over, you know, as a producer, a retailer with her shop, visitor experience, hospitality. So she has a really great understanding of all of the different sectors and elements that we'll be talking about today. And I think it's fair to say as well that Birgitta is networker and collaborator extraordinaire. She's fantastic at getting out there and meeting people and getting to know people and collaborating with chefs and with the hospitality sector as well as with other producers. So looking forward to chatting to Birgitta. And of course, JP McMahon, chef and restaurateur, who's joining us from his Michelin-Starred restaurant Anir in Galway, but also the owner of Calva Bodega restaurant and Tartar Cafe and Wine Bar, all in Galway. And of course, JP is the founder also of Food on the Edge Symposium and a cookbook author. You can see his Irish cookbook there in the background. So over the next hour, JP, Birgitta and I will be talking, of course, about the amazing seafood that we have along the Wild Atlantic Way, our organically farmed mussels, our native and rock oysters and organic salmon and much more. And we'll be talking a bit about how producers and the hospitality sector have adapted since COVID-19 hit and markets changed so much. And then we will speak about how we should think about seafood at Christmas, and what producers and restaurants can do to promote seafood a bit more around Christmas time. And then we look ahead to 2021, and in particular, how we might use the opportunities around the Taste of the Atlantic brand and the network to provide visitor experiences in 2021. So let's get going. Again, we welcome your questions throughout, so please feel free to start popping those into the Q&A as we're talking. So Birgitta, I might go to you first. I mean, as we all know, it's been a year like no other. Will you tell us a little bit, I suppose, just briefly about how your business has been impacted and what you've done to respond over the past few months?
Yeah, so we're there in March, and all this stuff suddenly started to happen. So of course, the first thing was removed was the food service element, and of course our international visitors, and in general, international and national visitors. So that was an absolute blow for me and a lot of other producers in the area. And we started to collaborate a lot and have a lot of network talks, huddles in the Burren Ecotourism Network actually together. And we came up with the idea of doing a Burren basket. Burren Smokehouse has been, like many other smokehouses, we've been online for about 30 years and have a lot of expertise in that area, but it's been mainly the salmon itself and certain amount of hampers. So we created a Burren hamper with producers like St. Ola goat's cheese, like Fiona in Ennis Diamond does a black and white pudding, and cheese from Alloy Caves, and also a jam from another producer. So we worked with the Burren Food Trail. So again, a collaborative effort of creating a hamper that could be sent both in Ireland, but also to Europe. And that was huge, it got huge support. Both, you know, it was accentuated through the network itself, because, you know, and also in general online, you know, talking about it. There was we did a PR exercise. So we did send out a network into the network, and also to different journalists. We sent a email to them through somebody that I'm working with. So, you know, it was a collaborative effort. I suppose we had certain things in place beforehand, but it was still a scrambling who will come up with products. And I mean, also particularly the cheese producers that were particularly hard hit with, like St. Ola goat cheese, with no food service. But that was huge impact for our business, also psychologically. We mightn't have been totally covering all the input of money that we got, but actually it did help to psychologically, it did help financially to a certain extent but also psychologically, to actually positivity of, yeah, we're sending out, and the immediate response, huge amount of Irish people connected with us, and a lot of new customers came to us as a result of that supporting our own. And so we were very delighted with that.
Yeah, that's interesting, Birgitta, because speaking to a lot of people, both particularly hospitality, I suppose a lot of the things people have done to innovate, they haven't necessarily really, certainly haven't replaced their normal revenue, and they,
no,
in some cases, aren't even really profitable. But I think the thing of staying active, being proactive, has really helped people, because shutting down completely and then trying to restart is even more difficult, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's keeping the brand out there. That's really important. And I think that we're all at that through Instagram, through Twitter, and through Facebook, wherever sources we have. But also, I think the positivity and the collaboration feeling. And the Burren baskets, we created 3 of them. 2 of them that could only be sent in Europe because of the products. And we created then one that can be sent to the US, because there's a lot of people have friends and family out in the US. And it has kept going. It started in March, and I think, you know, a lot of other, like St. Ola, for example, have started their own Clare hamper. So, you know, it was inspirational, but also it did keep going for us. And now for Christmas, there's a huge uptake on the Burren basket. So collaboration is really, really important. I think we need to work together. And as I said, brand building, keeping out there for when we can start again.
Absolutely. And you mentioned creating the baskets, you know, ones that can go to the US and to Europe. What has the market mainly been for those baskets? Has it mainly been the domestic market, or have a lot of them been going overseas?
Sorry, say that. Can you repeat that?
The Burren baskets, the market for those, has that been mostly international or domestic?
No, it's been the domestic market. So the Irish people sending within Ireland gifts for birthdays and for get well, and now for Christmas. And it gave us an opportunity to also showcase that we are using this online service. Like Easter would not be a big time for us to send baskets, but it was highlighted and accentuated through the difficulties and through the COVID. So that was very positive. But it's mainly Irish people sending abroad. And then we've had a certain amount of influx later on, but initially it was the Irish communication. Now we would have also highlighted it through our newsletter that goes out to our database of French, German, and, you know, international. USA would have been some uptake more as well, maybe Irish people living in the USA. But it would be that Irish community would have been the strongest, with some input from international as well, from Germany and France, but not to the same extent at all.
Okay, brilliant. And JP, I mean, obviously the seafood producers, a huge amount of their business is export, and a lot of that was impacted by COVID-19. But then, as Birgitta said, a lot of artisan producers across the board, including seafood producers, rely quite heavily on restaurants. So it was a huge hit for them when the restaurants closed.
No, absolutely, and I think it has been, I suppose, it has been difficult, but I think that in many ways, as you said, as you were talking with Birgitta, we've all had to pivot in different ways, and we've, I suppose, here doing online classes, and then also doing retail out of Tartar in a small way. Again, it's not going to replace what we do, but it has certainly helped, and I think we need to remember that. If COVID has showed us anything, it's a balance between the domestic and the international market. It's very important to maintain, and I think that I would always try and encourage producers, whether they have a visitor experience or whether they're producing a product and they're exporting, to try and engage, collaborate, network wherever they are along the Tasty Atlantic. And I think building up those relationships and stories is a way to spread the good word about Irish seafood.
Yeah, and I mean, as Birgitta said, she's been selling online for 30 years, and, you know, I suppose some of the, you know, smokehouses or the kind of secondary processors be more inclined to have their online sales or their retail element. But a lot of the primary producers, maybe for the first time, are kind of trying to get online and sell online. I know Kelly's Oysters here in Galway, they've started to offer their oysters as well as kind of mussels and clams for delivery by online order, and similarly Killary Fjord shellfish, you know, kind of having to pivot towards delivering directly to consumers. But it's new territory, isn't it, for a lot of those primary producers?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's interesting because in spite of the internet being around like 20 or 25 years, and I think we've learned a lot more about e-commerce, almost at a necessity. And certainly from a restaurant point of view and dealing with producers, we have pivoted online as well. And I think that, as you said, it's not going to replace our business, but I can see elements that are going to remain, like our online cooking classes. I think if you had suggested in the past before the pandemic, I don't think there would have been much uptake, but it is something we're going to keep going. I mean, about 75% of the interest of online cooking classes have been with America. There's been a great interest in I suppose not only learning how to cook, but talking about our Irish products as well as salmon or mussels and oysters. And so people have a desire to connect. And I think that if we can keep that audience when we reopen, I think we will be able to manage better. And then also, I think when international travel comes back and visitors come back, I think, as Birgitta says, keeping the brand out there in any way that you can, in smaller ways, I think then helps you when you go back.
Yeah, and in terms of what you did, as you said, you've been offering cookery classes online. And you also did tartare at home from Tartare Wine Bar. What kind of role did seafood play in both of those? And is there did you see opportunities with that to kind of promote seafood, and was it a popular option? Yeah,
no, definitely. In Tartare at home, we always had oysters and some type of cured fish, whether we cured it in house or whether it was smoked salmon. So they were very popular. It was another way of actually of getting in touch with people who mightn't necessarily have eaten with us, and all of the different bits and pieces like the seaweeds and the sea herbs that we use. I think it's you're always reaching new customers. I think I'd almost forgotten that the book came out at the end of February. So literally the book came out just as the pandemic hit, and the book has been a great way to for us as well, because we sell it through the restaurant, and so it's one of our sources of income at the moment. And I never would have thought that it would be like such an important source of income given the time. But the importance of shellfish and seafood in the book, which for me was very important to represent. I think it ended up being the biggest section in the book. And I remember the editors saying that, God, like they didn't even realize, and they're American editors, that seafood plays such an important role in Irish food. So I think I think we're doing a lot on the domestic front, but I think we can do a lot more on the international front, particularly tourists as well who come to Ireland and don't know about the stories of seafood. And I think even a lot of the online cooking classes, we've been cooking mussels with some American guests and oysters as well, and they're very interested. I think people sometimes have a little bit of a fear when they're cooking shellfish, and I think it's important that chefs and producers try and dispel those and helping people cook their product as well. So whether you're a mussel producer and you're just producing mussels, and I mean, having a little recipe online with your product, I think is a really good way of engaging with the local population.
Yeah, absolutely, Birgitta. I mean, those, when we think about kind of potential collaborations, sometimes those could be very, very simple, really, couldn't they? And I mean, that kind of idea of just maybe teaming up with a chef who buys your product for their restaurant and getting them to do a recipe so you can maybe inspire people to use fish a little bit more at home.
Absolutely. And I think that, we have a huge opportunity here with the Taste the Atlantic and brand, and also the connections. I mean, in our Taste the Atlantic experience, the salmon experience, we have a map with all the producers along the West Coast. And it is a very visual thing to see. And I think that, and talking about seafood and learning to know more about seafood, there's huge opportunity here of informing both people from Ireland. And I mean, we had a lot of, I mean, like everybody, the July and August with a lot of Irish visitors coming here, and to give more information, to talk about it, and of course, to taste the product itself. You know, there's huge opportunity, and that connection with the Taste the Atlantic and the Wild Atlantic Way is just perfect. And I think for the international market, that hopefully will come back next year, and very strong opportunity there, I think. And also maybe, I mean, according to Fáilte Ireland, the forefronters of the tourism and the international tourism coming back will be very high end. And again, to connect, I think we are perfectly placed as both producers, chefs, and other tourism providers to talk to these people, and that to intensify the experience that we have around seafood, because it is one of the most extraordinary things with, you know, I mean, that I experienced when I came here from Sweden, you know, experiencing the oysters and the oyster shocking, the lobster, the crab, the salmon, you know, the richness of it all. And I think, you know, now as well, I in a way, because we've had to take a step back from everything, and we are more maybe experiencing more intense, because there's less busyness around us. You know, we're at home working, or we're online, or whatever. And I think that will continue on a bit, and people have taken a step back. So maybe more opportunity to take in both taste, flavors, and information about seafood. And I think the more we can combine the tasting experience with the communication of, you know, nutritional value, the huge health benefits from fish that is already out there, but it can be intensified. And I think there's a huge opportunity right now, and going into 2021, to focus more on seafood. And, you know, with the COVID, people are a lot more health conscious. So I think this is we're in a very good moment for that, for innovation and for more communication about seafood, and the Irish West Coast seafood especially.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, and I think you're right that, you know, people are becoming more conscious of their health, but at the same time, because of the restrictions that have been placed, people are really looking for ways to kind of treat themselves, and you kind of have that balance with seafood of something that actually is very luxury but also very healthy, which is not you know, which is kind of not always the case. So to be able to kind of get beautiful fresh kind of seafood coming through your door, it's really an incredible kind of treat. Really.
And through the doors, as you say, I think there's, in a way, it's got more accessible. You know, there's been heightened awareness of, you can buy even fresh fish online from the like of Gannet Fish and Niles Abongi in Dublin. There's been discovery of, oh, well, we can do that. And also a lot of new, which is interesting, you know, it's nice to do new things, to be able to, like, oh, it worked. I got the oysters delivered to me, or I got that fresh fish delivered directly to me. You know, it won't be every day that you do that. You will go back and buy it maybe, you know, after the tasting, go buy it in your shops, but in retail situation. But I think there's an innovation that is happening, and that makes it even more interesting, because everybody has to think so innovative all the time of new opportunities. And even I think for restaurants, I mean, we started with takeaways that we've never even dreamt of doing before. And I mean, I'm sure the same thing for of course, for JP and for everybody who's part of this conversation. But I think that also that the things that we have innovated now, some of them will be just for now, and others will be an added income for when we come back to full swing again. So we're actually broadening our opportunities. So
just a very quick practical question, Birgitta, just before we move on, just from someone in the audience, in relation to actually delivering chilled foods. I know it's an obstacle that a lot of producers have faced, which is how to deliver foods that need to be kept chilled. Do you have any insights into good solutions for that?
of course, there's different ice packs, there's insulated boxes, there's different foods have better opportunity to survive, like if it's smoked, salted, vacuum packed, it of course is preserved to a higher degree than anything that is just fresh. But ice packs, insulated boxes, insulated padded bags, you know, there's a whole range of opportunities out there that you have to investigate in and see what works best for you. But there are definitely opportunities.
Yeah, yeah. And I think probably trying to get a relationship set up with a very dependable courier is important. And I know that most people who are delivering maybe chilled foods would kind of have a cutoff of Wednesday for delivery, so that foods arrive before the weekend and don't get held up in depots and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. There is a problem, of course, and there's a huge knowledge base. It's not that easy to operate mail order. It does take time to understand the full operations of it, and also customer care is huge. Like, you know, trying to look at products that are going to be delivered, if there's a delay, having communication with the provider, and whether it is UPS, DPD, Fastway, all of the different providers, you know, have direct communications, and that's something you do build up after a period of time. So of course that takes a lot of experience and knowledge, and you find the pitfalls as you go along, but everybody you have to start somewhere. And of course you can also talk to other providers and ask for help.
Again, yeah, the power of kind of the networks and
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we have supplied for other people, actually helped them to start off, where we would have taken on some very local produce for a period of time, only a short period of time, because for a while there you couldn't even get, there was so much going on, you couldn't even get an account with some of the providers, you know. So that's, you know, that's an issue as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so we have a few more questions coming in around all of those kind of, I suppose, logistical issues, but we might try and come back to some of them later on. JP, I mean, obviously everyone, particularly in hospitality, obviously, but hugely for producers, is focused on Christmas now, and, you know, hopefully reopening and hopefully being able to leverage the business opportunities as much as possible. For the last 2 years, you've done an Irish seafood Christmas event, and you've tried to really promote and talk about why people should enjoy seafood at Christmas.
Yeah, I think Christmas is a great time for celebrating seafood. I suppose because the waters are cooler. I think the shellfish and seafood is better in I suppose in cooler, colder waters, and we somehow have an association, I suppose many of us do, with eating mussels in the sun and oysters during the summer and that. But for me, it's really important that we try and celebrate these around times when the seafood is best. And we've done this event the last 2 or 3 years in Tartara. Unfortunately, it probably won't happen this year. But what we wanted to do was to try and bring the food and also the producers together. So we did a little menu, and it was sponsored by BIM. We put as much seafood on, little small plates of a whole range of seafood, from what I have in front of me to crab and langoustines and sea urchin and abalone, everything that we can get in the west of Ireland. And then to also invite the producers, and then invite the customers as well, just to have a little celebration for a few hours. And it's really just to try and to tie that in our minds. When we look to some of our other European countries, like say the Nordics or even the Mediterranean, I find they're very good at celebrating seafood at this time of year. And I think it's something we should do. We should try a little more, whether it's in restaurants, and offering people shellfish or seafood as part of their Christmas menus, or of just trying to put a little more on, because again, it is best. And I think this is also we'll try and tackle the problem of the domestic versus the export. And I think that we need to I suppose support our producers more, and to give them space on our menus. And I think the key thing is telling stories through food and through the fish, and whether it's Birgitta salmon or Kelly's mussels, or we have Castle oysters. I think for me, it's very important always trying to link a place, a person with the product, and that's how you crystallize it in people's mind and become something more than just food.
Brilliant, thanks. And Birgitta, of course, you're from Sweden originally, and when we were speaking a few days ago, you were speaking about what JP mentioned there, which is the kind of Norse tradition around eating seafood at this time of year.
Yeah, I mean, the smorgasbord is something that I grew up with, and of course, it's a celebration, particularly Christmas. You'll have that smorgasbord starter, and it's something that you can, for sharing, or sharing plates. And I have adapted what we have on instead of the herring, maybe would be more, we would have the oysters coming into our Christmas celebrations, and for the morning of the Christmas to have the oysters. And then I actually started a few years back to start with, again, luxury, but lobsters directly bought from our local producer or local fisherman here in Newquay or Doolin, and have that as a Christmas Eve celebration. So, I mean, within your family to add that on to the starter particularly, it's just amazing. And of course, we would, through our restaurants, whether it's the Gastropub and Roadside Tavern or Burren Storehouse, we would always have had some mussels, oysters, salmon, so that the option is there. And of course, name the producer or where we get it from. That's really, really important in that message that we give out to our national or all our people from Ireland or international visitors, that we are so proud of all these products, and we're so proud that we want to name where it comes from. And by the way, you can go and visit them as well on the Taste Atlantic, for example. Now you can go to Kelly's Oysters or Newquay to Kira Halloran. So, the storytelling you do and the serving of it within your family itself is inspiring your family that will go out and buy more seafood. But, it's just part of my fiber. Seafood is where I grew up with. And as I said, being on the west coast of Ireland, it's so exciting to have the proximity and being so near it, and to be able to access it also online if you need.
JP, a couple of people asking questions there, like if you've noticed, have Irish people started to eat more seafood? Do you find that in the restaurant, things like oysters, have they become more popular? And someone asking, what's the most popular seafood dish in your restaurants?
Yeah, no, there's definitely, like, in the longer term, over the last 10 or 15 years, I've seen a massive increase from, say, when we opened Cava in 2008 to the point where we opened Tartare 3 years ago. I mean, I think it's huge. And the fact that the signature dish in Tartare, the two signature dishes, one is beef Tartare and the other is oysters with trout roe and sea lettuce. And to say, like, in the space of 10 years that we could have done that, and people now would come to Tartare for oysters, and we have 4 different oyster producers and 4 different oyster dishes and different garnishes. And for me, it was really important to try and take the oyster, which we're so used to just putting lemon or Tabasco or a bit of pickled onion, and to really try and turn it into a celebration of food and taste. And we had one that was just going on, which was melted durris and pickled elderflower, and like before lockdown happened. But for me, all of these things are really really important, and it's important to have shellfish on the menu all the time. Now, I think we're still not there. I think it's still a challenge, and the generational divide, I think, is still evident. I mean, it's great to see my kids eating mussels. I didn't grow up eating mussels. My parents wouldn't be big shellfish eaters, but at least it's just that constant encouragement, and it's also a broadening, I think, of our own horizons through traveling and through the internet. I think some of the when we look at Cava, some of where there's a kind of Iberian influence, some of the most popular dishes are scallops and mussels with almonds and white wine. And then in tartare, we have a more kind of Irish influence, and the oyster dish is certainly very popular. But then we have a mussel and clam with it's a spelt noodles, or a spelt linguine, but it's like a pasta made with Irish flour. And for me, it's very important that when we're trying to promote Irish shellfish and seafood, I really think we need to use it as a vehicle and look at other food cultures, and whether it's because we enjoy so much food in Ireland, so much different type of food, like Mexican and Japanese and Italian and Spanish. And I think it's important that that we use the Irish seafood and use it in different ways to get people to eat it, because I think that's the stumbling block sometimes, is that people think it's a difficult thing to cook, or people think it's not interesting, but they're very receptive to a lot of flavors. So whether it's Thai or Mexican, I really think that we can use Irish seafood in that way. And
coming back to Christmas, JP, I know you've got some of the products there in front of you. Some of the ways that you feel, that restaurants could maybe try and incorporate a bit more seafood onto their menus in to Christmas, or a bit of inspiration, I suppose, from you in terms of using our mussels and oysters and salmon.
Yeah, so very simply, I mean, I have mussels and dillis. These are Kelly's mussels with dillis, and usually I just steam them with the seaweed. And dillis is a very nice seaweed to eat as well once it's been this is dried dillis once it's been rehydrated, and it has a great kind of umami potential. So I love combining mussels with different types of seaweed. A lot of them can be purchased dry. Some of them you can go and pick on the beach yourself, like channeled rack or anything like that. Another way we do it as well is pickled mussels. I mean, again, a lot of people think of shellfish and pickling, but great little starter. And we have pickled mussels with some creme fraiche. Really nice cool starter. The oysters, as I said, our most popular way of serving them is with goat's fridge, trout roe, sea lettuce, and some extra virgin rapeseed oil from Kitty Colchester. And for me, it really highlights the kind of the terroir of the oyster. But I think oysters are, no matter where you're coming from, I think it's really they adapt to any way you want. So I think it's whatever type of restaurant you have in Ireland, oysters have a place on the menu. We also make an oyster cracker as well, which we blend the oyster and then turn it into a cracker and then deep fry it. It turns into almost like a prawn cracker, and we serve that with an oyster mayonnaise. And that's another way that it's another way of getting people to eat the oyster when sometimes they're a bit skeptical about eating a whole oyster. But we've had many people who have come into Tartare and Anira and have never eaten oysters and have gone away really happy. And then lastly, I have some of Birgitta's smoked salmon with a little bit of sea purslane, which is a beach herb, and we make a nice flavored mayonnaise. Sometimes we make a charcoal mayonnaise or something very clean and simple, and then pair it with it in a little small plate. So I think most of for me, seafood and shellfish speak for itself, and they're very robust flavors. And I think letting the shellfish speak and surrounding with it with a few simple flavors is the best way for people to taste it.
And just very briefly, JP, someone asking here, are there challenges around sourcing local seafood, and could it be improved? I suppose, what's your advice to others in the restaurant trade in terms of sourcing these products?
I suppose, I mean, I speak from the position of Galway. I think it is very good now, and whether it's mussels or oysters, salmon, lobster. I think sometimes maybe in other counties you may have to establish connections, but I think reaching out to producers, a lot of them deliver wholesale, and wherever you are whether you're along the west coast or whether you're inland, I think some things like possibly lobsters will be harder to get, but at the same time it's not impossible, and also sometimes just because it's not being delivered to you, it doesn't mean it can't be delivered. I think sometimes producers just need a little nudge, and I'm always very I think for me, it's very, very important to try and pop out and visit the producers. And I visited different producers all the way up to Donegal, like Mulray Bay mussels, some of the organic salmon farms down to Kerry as well. And like, it's a great experience to see it. And so I think wherever you are, and if you want to get them on your menu, whether you're in the contract catering, or you're a hotel, or you're in any sort of different institution, or just a restaurant, I think trying to get out to see the produce and establish a connection and find out how you can get it to yourself, I think is one way of doing it.
Brilliant, thanks JP. And Birgitta, someone actually asking here, do you think chefs in Ireland understand what organic salmon is? Well, I'm not going to ask JP that question. I'm going to ask you, because you're the salmon expert. And as JP said, he did have the chance to visit a salmon farm, and maybe not everyone realizes that all of the salmon we're producing now is certified organic.
Well, I think that a lot of people really do, but there is a lot, you're surprised, you know, I mean, chefs are busy people. There's a lot of information to take in about all products. And I suppose the organic salmon, first of all, I suppose about the labelling law, so Irish smoked would not necessarily mean that it's organic or it's from Ireland. If it's not organic, it's not from Ireland, because 98% of the production of salmon on the west coast of Ireland is organic. So if it ain't organic, it's not Irish. So Irish smoked does not cut mustard. And you know, that busy lives, it can be easy to, even if it is an Irish producer, you really need to make sure that it is organically certified to make sure if it's 100% Irish you want. So yeah. No.
So what should they be looking out for then in terms of the labelling, how that's phrased?
Okay, Irish smoked, Irish organic salmon would be the complete, you know, package. So it's Irish smoked and it's Irish organic salmon. You know, for sure it's Irish. And I mean, maybe you need to go back to the producer and ask, is it really, you know, maybe they have forgotten to put in organic, but not very likely. So
okay, thanks.
That's the only way. And, you know, there is a price difference. I mean, we've chosen to we do 100% Irish organic salmon. We don't do any other salmon. And I suppose it's a price, it comes with a price as well, because I could put in products that would be cheaper and also be able to sell it on cheaper in a wholesale that is not Irish. But I prefer to use my euro and spend it in Ireland. So that's the price for it.
Brilliant. And Birgitta, before
you know, the omega-3 and oils, 3 and 6 oils, and the firmness of the salmon itself, I think it's top class. I wouldn't use anything else because I don't think it meets the standards that the Irish organic farm salmon does when it comes to farm. Of course, we do some wild salmon, but again, you know, it's seasonal and it's very little of it. But we do get some Irish wild salmon as well in season.
Yes, of course, and that's really, really special when you can get it. And of course, very limited numbers are caught every year, so there's a price tag associated with that, and rightly so.
Very much so.
Yeah. Birgitta, just before we kind of move on from talking about the upcoming Christmas season, just briefly I wanted to ask you if you've seen a change in the normal kind of patterns of business in the run up to Christmas, and maybe what has changed, and have new opportunities emerged as well?
Sorry, if new
opportunities around the Christmas market.
Yeah, well, again, it's the online, you know, the people that are at home and looking online, that's the opportunity for Christmas. Other than that, you know, retail is strong, you know, so it actually has accentuated as well, the likes of, we supply the McCambridges, all the specialty food shops. There are opportunities there, but really it's online, you know, that's the strongest. I mean, I will expect to have some food service back pre-Christmas, but it will be limited, you know, and that's just the situation. But I suppose sharing recipes would be, and going online and talking about the products, that's the opportunity, because people are online, and so in a way, again, for the brand building, these days when we are less busy in other areas and at home, it is an opportunity to talk about things and communicate about seafood through photography, through messaging, and that's the opportunity I can see.
Right. So, and I know, just in terms of the producers who are part of Taste the Atlantic, I know there's a number of them who, like yourself, Birgitta, have gotten online and are offering, I suppose, not just their own products, but maybe a selection. I think that's probably important as well in terms of getting traffic to your website and, you know, offering people, if you can, a selection of different items. I know your own website, as you said, includes the different Burren baskets as well as your own products and selections of your own products kind of packaged. And looking at Sligo seafood experience, they've done, you know, put together some hampers and that kind of thing on their website. As I mentioned earlier, Kelly's Oysters have beautiful new website where they're offering the lovely kind of wooden baskets of different quantities of both the native and rock oysters and some clams and mussels. And then, as you mentioned, I mean, the smokeries, a lot of them would have been selling online for quite a while. And again, Taste the Atlantic producers, Mhara and Cork and Woodcock's Smokery and Clark's up in Ballina, all kind of offering products, their own products or hampers online. And again, that idea of, I suppose, collaborating with other producers gives you the opportunity to offer a bit more of a selection as well, and maybe bring a few more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think actually one of the areas that is an opportunity as well is offering experiences online. You know, that is something that, you know, a voucher for future experiences when you come back, when we can travel again. So that would be, you know, like a voucher for JP's cookery demos, or coming to visit to the smokehouse or visit any of the smokehouses or any of the experiences that can be highlighted. And even if people don't take up the vouchers, it's something to talk about, that you have an experience that, or we have experiences, or you can have experience together for when you come traveling again. And again, we have collaborated quite a lot locally with our own network. And it's something, you know, I see the Taste the Atlantic as another network that in futuristic that we can work more on and offer these experiences. Because when people come to see me, they don't only come to, you know, Clare. Often people are going on to Dingle or they're going to Connemara. And the more, you know, the opportunities are that they, you know, they're going to stay somewhere, they're going to eat somewhere, so collaboration with the restaurant, but they're also going to move on to different area. And to have these heightened experience together and to communicate about them together under the brand of Taste the Atlantic, I think the opportunity is there, along with the Wild Atlantic Way, and to be even more highlighting about seafood especially. And the people that are into seafood, they just love it. And they want to have more immersive experiences around seafood. So I think we have huge opportunities there, both for the Irish market, but also to the international market. And it's something that I think now is a good time, and January, February, looking into 2021, 2022, these are the opportunities that we have there to collaborate together and to have that platform actually through, you know, the Bord Iascaigh Mhara and Fáilte Ireland, and in the extension Tourism Ireland as well, you know, with video footage, with photography. I think there are, and with the collaboration, I think there's huge opportunities there for us all.
Absolutely, Birgitta. Yes, and we have a kind of a comment or question coming in there as well from someone in the audience saying, you know, should seafood producers also kind of work with farmers and other food producers, because the customer doesn't necessarily differentiate between them and wants to experience them all. And so I think that kind of local collaboration with other producers as well is very valuable. JP, looking ahead to 2021, and Birgitta has really alluded to like the opportunities that are there. What kind of experiences do you think people are looking for? What should producers and the hospitality sector think about in terms of kind of the Taste the Atlantic opportunity and the kind of experiences they can create for people?
I think from my own experience from visiting some of the I suppose some of the experience that we have along the Atlantic is is really that people are coming to Ireland, whether they're domestic or international travel. And I think that we need, they might differentiate between different producers. So they're possibly coming to Galway, then going down to Clare, and then on to Dingle and that. And so I think having a holistic approach, and where they can go to a mussel farm or go to a salmon farm, go to an oyster farm, maybe buy some of that product, take it away with them, taste it there, interact with social media, interact with the people on the ground, and then travel on and then have something similar. So I'd like to see a lot more of that in 2021 and 2022 to really kind of cement our reputation, both nationally and internationally, with regards to a kind of our culture. And really, I'm always talking about trying to promote Irish food as a cultural experience. And I think like restaurants are one aspect of that, producers are another aspect, but I think the audience or the tourist is really, really important. And that could just be someone from down the road visiting Birgitta and explaining how the salmon is produced, or going to a mussel farm. And I think we need more of them, those experiences open to everyone on the island, but also to tourists.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose just to kind of mention again some of the producers who are part of the Taste the Atlantic. Of course, Birgitta last year launched her Irish salmon visitor experience, and that's, I mean, obviously a really I suppose sophisticated and kind of interactive visitor experience that huge investment has gone into, and it's going to be a real destination. But also, as I mentioned earlier on, Sligo Seafood Experience, they're selling their products online, but they've been quite innovative as well in terms of they have both their town tour and their farm tour, which again, I suppose is really about making things as accessible to as wide an audience as possible. So you can go in to the cafe where they've set up their little oyster bar and do your tasting and oyster opening, or you can go for the immersive kind of visitor experience on the oyster farm. And I think it's interesting. Those kind of things obviously would be quite accessible, even if people kind of are seeking maybe more outdoor experiences and still thinking about things like social distancing. And DK Connemara Oysters out in Letterfrack have similarly developing visits on their farms, and have set those up so that they can bring quite small groups around. I suppose it's really important then, if the producers are going to provide these experiences, that people can find the seafood on the menus in the restaurants as well, isn't it? Birgitta, I suppose how do you think that we can kind of really encourage more of that kind of collaboration?
Well, you know, I mean, there's, before like 2019, you know, I think that festivals, pop-ups, you know, Food on the Edge, you know, had a huge impact on collaboration. So I think that is great opportunities for focusing collaborations, and I hope that the festivals that have been running in Ireland will come back next year, because it's a meeting place, you know, where it's not running in, you know, producer coming into a busy restaurant, you know, you don't have time, but it's these moments where you have collaboration between producers and chefs and restaurateurs, where you meet each other on a different level playing field. And working together to accentuate. So I think that initiatives like that are really, really important, and that we'll get back to it. And even these webinars, you know, through the webinars as well, that has been accentuated. But creating new innovative experiences, whether it's online and of course much more immersive in situ on the West Coast. I know, you know, the wow effect of the Food on the Edge had on people, like all the chefs coming from outside, and they kind of, wow, we never realized what was here on the West Coast fully. And I suppose it's that wow effect that we want to create with people's passion, you know, whether it's producers' passion or the chef's passion, sharing that with together and also with the people that are visiting. And I think that the VIP experiences, like the smaller events are smaller, like maybe 4 to 6 people, high-end, a certain cost as well, you know, experiences, to build these experiences where you meet the makers, meet the producers, meet the chefs. That is really the way forward for Ireland. And I think with the Wild Atlantic Way and the Taste the Atlantic, seafood, other producers, we have such an opportunity. And it's about communicating these and making more of them, so collectively we can then go out together and sell Ireland as a luxury experience with personalized experiences where people are, you know, really well looked after. And will also, it's an opportunity for, I think, for income and revenue, where you can have, you give more yourself, but you, and your experience, but you're also paid more. That in combination with larger groups. But I think that these experiences and personalized experiences are so perfectly pitched for Ireland, for international visitors. The storytelling, you know, which is one of the strengths of the Irish community. So I think that going forward, I think that we need to work on that. There's opportunities there for us all on the Taste Atlantic and on the Wild Atlantic Way.
Absolutely, thank you, Birgitta. And yeah, and I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with JP on Food on the Edge, and I think it's incredible, really, sometimes how much, you know, we need to see things through the eyes of people coming in from outside to really appreciate it. And we've been lucky enough to visit lots of incredible producers along the Wild Atlantic Way with the chefs from Food on the Edge who've been here for Food on the Edge, and as you said, they've been really blown away by what they've experienced. We're nearly out of time, unfortunately, and we've lots of questions coming in, and unfortunately I won't get to many of them. But a couple, I suppose, someone saying, do you notice flavours from oysters from different regions, and is this something that could be developed? And I know that's a thing that quite often I've talked to chefs about, how you can really notice the difference in flavours. And I know that people like Niall Savongi and Claude in Dublin have done kind of oyster tasting plates with different oysters from along the coast. JP, a couple of people asking about young chefs or trainee chefs and how you would advise to train them around cooking with fresh fish or using seafood. Very briefly, any advice on that?
Like, I suppose, other than what they can do themselves, I mean, I think I know the college program tries to teach the chef as much as possible from many different areas, and I think really if you want to specialize in seafood or shellfish, I would seek out restaurants that are cooking it, seek out producers. So if that's something you really want to get into, just on the point of the oyster experience, I do think we need more of these trails or connections that they have on the continent. So connecting our mussel farmers, connecting our oyster farmers, having smaller festivals possibly around mussels and oysters. I know we already have some of them, but I'd like to see more of them in Ireland, like different celebrations, like the way the Italians celebrate mushrooms or the Spanish celebrate leeks. I think we need those micro festivals that to help connect and join the dots. And but I do think younger chefs, I think it's like really just go out and try and meet people and find people who are cooking seafood and shellfish in the way that in the way that you like. And if anyone has any other questions, particularly for myself, they can email the restaurant. I know we don't have a massive amount of time, but we're always open to talk and to try and encourage.
That's brilliant, JP. And maybe in one line, I know you've given a few recommendations. Someone says, what dish would you recommend as on a Christmas menu? A fish dish or a white fish? Sorry.
A white fish. Like I think cooking, I suppose off the top of my head, I think cooking, if you didn't want to go turkey or ham, I think you could cook a whole turbot. And I think we cook a turbot with seafood. I cook it all the time. I think cooking fish whole for the family, like the way you cook a whole turkey, is probably the simplest and most cost-effective way. And it is actually a lovely dish to look at as well. And again, it's something that you find the Spanish would do a lot, cook whole sea bream for Christmas Eve and that. So I like to encourage people to cook whole fish.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Just a couple of other kind of questions and comments before we close. TG O'Connor in IT Tralee said, I think there's an opportunity to link industry chefs with producers on Taste the Atlantic to produce recipes for producer websites, and that's something that we did mention earlier on. So I suppose would encourage the producers to connect with the chefs that they supply. I know most chefs would be more than happy to provide some simple recipes. Couple of people asking about support and about getting involved in Taste the Atlantic. So yes, if you're a tourism operator, absolutely do get in contact with Fáilte Ireland. And if you're a producer, get in contact with BIM. Someone asking if there's supports available for setting up those kind of collaborations that we've spoken about. So I would encourage you to get in touch with BIM and discuss that. And also, just as a practical note, the BIM Seafood Innovation Hub in Clonakilty can offer advice around packaging and new product solutions. So do feel free to get in contact with them as well. Lots of other questions that unfortunately we're not going to get to. We didn't talk about Brexit at all, but maybe that's for another day. Someone asking how Brexit will impact your business, and I'm sure that's something Birgitta will be looking at. So apologies that we can't get to any more questions. We're out of time. I want to say a huge thank you to Birgitta and JP for giving us their time and all of their expertise and experience this morning. A huge thank you to all of the participants who've joined us live this morning. Thank you to Intrigo who are running the webinar and providing the technical support. They've been fantastic. And a huge thanks to the team in BIM and in Fáilte Ireland for making this event happen. Again, you can continue the conversation and connect on Taste the Atlantic network. And someone asking, is there a list of producers? We are going to share an interactive map of the Taste the Atlantic producers with everyone who signed up for the webinar. So you will find the contact details for all the producers who are part of Taste the Atlantic there. Many of them will be happy to supply restaurants directly or through a distributor. That is it from us for this morning. I know a couple of people are looking for how to kind of follow up and get involved, so we might look at seeing if we can